comes from the Sanskrit word buddhi, which means to open your eyes, to wake up or to see. And the person that we call the Buddha was simply the man who woke up, the person, or the first person to open his eyes to see the nature of reality. So what we're going to be dealing in the next few months is with the teachings of this particular man. Now you know that Buddhism was at one time was very, very widespread. In the last 1,000 years it has declined in countries like Indonesia, but now it's started to grow in countries like the United States and Germany. And it is the main teachings of this very ancient and very beautiful religion that we're going to explore. And this week we're going to start by looking at cosmology, what Buddhism says about the nature of the universe. So if you turn to page 12 of your textbook, we'll start. What does Buddhism say about the universe? Now, before we answer this, we'd have to say, well, why should we even talk about this subject? We're going to talk about this subject for only one reason. Some religions believe that it is important to explain how everything began. Buddhism has never considered this to be a particularly important subject. Hinduism has never considered this to be a particularly important subject. But religions like, say, Christianity and Islam believe that it's very important to explain how everything began. So as a Buddhist teacher, I know I've never thought about this subject before. What on earth is the nature of the universe got to do with how I live my life? Nothing. But so many people say, oh, Bhante, how did the world begin? Oh. So many people ask me this question, so I've decided that the best way is to look at this question from the Buddhist point of view and get it out of the way. How did it all begin? How did everything come into being? And the answer to that question is, nobody knows. Why? Because whenever it happened a long, long time ago. So all we've got is theories about how the universe began. And there are two types of theories: religious theories and scientific theories. And what are the religious theories? There are hundreds of them. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. According to the ancient Egyptians, their God had a potter's wheel, and he got some mud, and he created everything out of earth. According to the one theory in ancient India, God dreamed the universe. According to the ancient Greeks, there was a gigantic egg, and it hatched, and everything came out of this cosmic egg. Now all these theories, God did this, God created everything, God said let there be light, a cosmic egg hatched. These are all myths, they're stories, they have no basis in fact at all. Some of them are quite lovely stories, but they have no basis in fact. And the reason that people created these stories is because they saw that things appeared to have a beginning, so they assumed that the whole universe must have a beginning. But more sophisticated people see that this is rather a very strange way of thinking. Is there a beginning to everything? So for example, if you look at numbers, is 1 the first number? Or is -1 the first number? Or -2? Or minus... Does it really have a beginning? Is it possible for there to be absolutely nothing and then suddenly absolutely everything? Where did it come from? Now some people say, well, it all came from God. But then you'd have to ask the question, where did he come from? Because he must have come from somewhere. And they'll say, well, he's always been there. Then if God can always have been there, why can't the universe have always been there? So this is why Buddhism really doesn't have very much to say on this subject. It's really not particularly important. However, over the centuries, people have, with very creative minds, have created all sorts of myths, legends and stories about how everything began. No one of these stories is any better or any more true than the other. They are all myths, they're all stories. Now, when we come to modern science, we find the situation is very different. Science doesn't know about everything. But what science does is it looks at the known facts and tries to base some theories on those facts. And scientists, of course, the purpose of science is to explore everything. So science has given some attention to the nature and the origins of the universe. And they have come to several conclusions. There are still several different theories. But the main theory nowadays, or one of the main theories nowadays, is, of course, that the universe as it exists at present certainly had a beginning. Now this theory is called the theory of the oscillating universe. It's one of the main theories in science today. And this is the idea that at one point in time, trillions of years ago, there was an enormous explosion. They call it the Big Bang. You must have heard of that phrase, that there was a Big Bang. And this Big Bang created the universe. There was an explosion and matter, energy, exploded outwards. Just like, well, when you see one of these action movies, they've always got some big explosions in it. If you put a big bomb in a building or a rock or something, it will explode outwards. And what happens is those pieces generally spin. So their theory is, and it sounds fairly sensible theory, is that all this matter began spinning outwards at incredible speeds. And that's why most of the objects in the universe are round. Over millions, hundreds of millions of years of spinning outwards, they've gradually become basically round. And in fact, they now know that all the objects of the universe are moving away from each other at a phenomenal speed. We don't sense that. But when they measure stars and galaxies, they know that they are moving away from each other at an incredible rate. So in actual fact, the universe is still expanding outwards. All that energy released millions of years ago is still expanding outwards. But they know that sooner or later, that momentum will slow down. And then the great pressure in the universe will start to pack it all back together again. Now, you won't be here when that happens. That's going to happen in 958 billion years from now. But it will happen. The pressure will force all the matter and energy in the universe back together again, tighter and tighter and tighter, until eventually, boom, it will expand outwards again. And according to scientists, this process has been just going on for trillions and hundreds of thousands of billions of years. So our little planet, our little world, we think God's looking after us. If there is a God, our world is a tiny piece of dust over there. It's nothing. A tiny, insignificant, hardly noticeable piece of dust in a vast universe. We like to think we're special. We're not really. I mean, to my wife I am, or my girlfriend, or my boyfriend, but in the context of the whole universe, our pain and joy, our significance, our little life, is nothing. That is how science sees the universe.